got a few new things here in our permaculture backyard. So I'm beginning to work on a trellis design. I'm going to be taking this curved one here and I'm going to fasten it in somehow like this. It'll be pretty neat. And I'll get some grapevines and I'll wrap it. I think that'll look pretty nice. There, that's a better shot. Kiwis that are going to adorn our trellis. That'll take all of this summer, all of next summer before they get up there. And then the third summer they should be covering it pretty good. Here is the first man crop garden that I started with way back in the 80s, right here behind the garage. Of course, back then I didn't call it a main crop garden. Let's get a little better view here. I'll walk in there and I'll give you a play-by-play as to what I have planted in every one of these beds. This area here is overrun with stinging nettles, and that's good. I use them for composting. And I have an anaerobic compost pile that I started last year in the summer, and I'm going to start it back up again this summer. This is for our kitchen waste, but I'll probably turn it. I'll flip it to the front here. I got butternut squash back here, and then I have a Four Sisters design in the back, 2 beds. I have the corn. I didn't plant the beans yet. The corn's just coming up, so I'm going to plant the beans. We got the squash back here, plus I'm going to be planting some squash in the beds. And then the fourth one this year is going to be yacon. So we got corn, bean, squash, and yacon. And what the yacon does is it puts a root in the ground. So we have the yacon roots, we have the beans, we have the corn, and we have the squash growing along, vining along the ground. So yacon is a member of the sunflower seed family, and sunflowers used to be part of the 3 sisters, well, 4 sisters back, you know, a couple thousand years ago when the Indians were doing this, or the indigenous. So the next row up we have 8 elephant garlic, and I have some carrot seeds and radish seeds and some beet seeds in amongst it. But the majority of it is carrots. Carrots and leeks are companion plants. And right on the end here I have a little bit of barley growing. The next row is a big mixture. We have potato onions on the north side of the bed. In the center we have tomatoes and celeriac. And in the front we have a couple parsnips coming up. Over here we have radishes, potato onions, kohlrabi, basil, cilantro, a potato, volunteer potato plant. So there's a lot going on there. And finally in the front here I have little circles, and they're about 1 foot apart, and they're staggered along a row of carrots. And these are the 240-day carrots, so I won't be harvesting these till December. And then planted, staggered throughout around those circles are leeks. And there's some volunteer radishes that came up. I'm letting them go to fruition. And here's a parsnip from last year. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might end up pulling it out. We'll see what I do. I have a couple of wild apple tree seeds growing here. They're little seedlings. Well, actually, this is the second summer. And some pears from the old pear tree. In the foreground here, we have sour red cherries. Along the fence line, we have some black currants in the corner. We have blackberries. There's quite a number of plants here. 1, 2, 3, 4 plants along that short 15-foot fence line. And we have 4 grapevines. Those are seedless Reliance. Back corner we have a gooseberry. And we also have red beauty kiwi in the back, a Sachandra vine, more blackberries, comfrey. A lot going on in this garden here. Now here we have our kiwi trellis behind the garage. There's also a wild grapevine growing along with it. And the purpose of the wild grapevine is I wanted to shade that garage from the western sun. And I'm going to encourage that grapevine to go and grow on top of the garage roof, providing further shade. And then in amongst the wild grapevine here, which I'm not allowing to come out, I'm pruning all the branches that protrude out, and I'm allowing these kiwis to grow. So we have a number of females here. Here's a male. This is an Arctic Beauty. You can see the white leaves. Looks pretty nice with the white leaves. Oh, they're just starting to flower. I'll have to get the camera and give you a close-up. Ah, nice. So hopefully we get a female that's going to flower. And another female in the back here. And this female really is liking being next to the water tank because it's got a slight drip, and this soil here is always wet. So it's the thickest of all of them. Eventually I want it to totally cover and come around this top pole here so that we have like a tunneling effect. And it's getting close to that now. Right there. There are the white leaves. This is the wild grapevine, and it's got these all over the place. Now, last year did the same thing and they all fell off. So I'll tell you, if these things come to fruition, I'm going to have lots and lots and lots of wild grapes for jam. So right here on the ground we have a bed of honeyberries. I don't know, there's 7-8 plants in here. This is their 4th summer, and every winter they've been ate down by the rabbits. So I'm going to have to be fencing this area in though. Rabbits can't get in here. Which is good in the beginning. It gets the root growth stimulated, and of course the rabbits leave behind the fertilizer. That's all well and good, but at some point we want to have some honeyberries, so I'm going to let them grow. In the background we got blackberries and grapes. I had 2 marvelous blackberry plants here that grew up like trees, but I think the cold killed them about 2 feet up, right at the top of the tube. Both of them were black, and of course they wouldn't leaf, so I had to cut them back. So I'm going to have to devise some way to insulate them next year. We have a mulberry, we have a grapevine, we have another blackberry, another grapevine, and another blackberry here that really made it. That's really good. We have a lemony quince. On this side we have a series of blueberries. This is going to be their 3rd summer, and they were the same thing. Ate down by the rabbits every year, so now I tubed them. Because the rabbits even eat them in the summer. They don't leave them alone. So I'm tubing them. Mostly kiwis, and we have a sweet lavender mulberry that we have spaliered. Let me see if I can point that espalier out here. Right here's the sweet lavender kiwi, and here's a branch that I attached to the fence in the back. Here's another one, and then there's 2 on the other side. And I'm going to allow one more set to grow here, and I might stick a wire over the top and get another one. So we'll have 4 or 5 layers of branches that will espalier, or espalier. Here's our lemony quince, and it flowered this year, but they're pretty much gone. Let's see if we can get a close-up of that. So I don't know if I'm going to get a quince this year, but this is its 4th summer, so you can see it's almost done. So hopefully a bumblebee got in there and fertilized it. If that's what has to happen, I don't even know. I have to look that up. So we're standing on top of a giant hugelkultur here, where the honeyberries and the blueberries are. You can see the mushrooms are coming up. I don't know what kind those are, so I'm not going to eat them. This is an area in front of our first main crop garden here, and I planted the entire thing with these spring onions. And there was one every 6 inches through this whole bed, a good 10 feet of it. And that's what we ate from April 1st until now. I pulled some out again this morning. I like eating them for breakfast in the morning. Fry them up with eggs. So right now I just seeded it with buckwheat. Hopefully it'll drown out some of these weeds. And I don't know what I'm going to plant here, but we have the kiwis growing in here. I'm going to have to plant something helpful to them. Then I've got some ground cherries in here right now. Just put them in. Background there, you see the larger onions. Those were planted by the bulb. Whereas the front ones I just described are planted by seed. So those bulbs, I've been moving them around the garden. I harvest the seeds from the plants and plant them, and that's the spring onions for eating in the spring, and then the bulbs I move around. And their purpose is to just grow me seeds. Okay, this is our second main crop garden. We get inside of here. Okay, so you got the fence explanation. Before, we have a fence that separates the first and second main crop garden. And I allow that fence to be in existence because if a critter gets into one of the other gardens, like a woodchuck, it's not going to be so easy to access the entire area here that I have fenced in. So, and also that fence in the center serves as a trellis for grapes and blackberries. Now in the background I have an asparagus bed, and these particular asparagus now are 4 years old. I just started harvesting from them. And I'll tell you, they produce a lot of asparagus because I allowed them to grow on their own for 3 summers. And they're still shooting up shoots that I can harvest if I want. We already got, each one probably has 5 to 10 shoots coming out of it. So that's going to be some massive root system there. And then along with that asparagus I have some climbing peas, and there's some spring onions, and then in front of that are tomatoes. I have a lineup of kiwis here. I got a trellis system that's going to kind of bend over the main access pathway to the shed. We have some service berries. In this first bed here there are peas and potatoes, and I just planted some beans in it. And on the other side is the same, peas, beans, and potatoes. And these are potatoes that I actually left in the ground over winter. And the beans on this side, I planted some really brilliant white and brown beans that I grew in 2012, and I've been holding on to seed. I haven't planted them. And then on the other side I planted some soybeans. So there's soybeans, and these white beans are going to be growing with the potatoes and the peas. In the front here I got a very small bed. I have blackberries, I got kohlrabi, I got spring onions, there's asparagus, and there's gooseberries in the corner. And then my grandma's peony. Another main crop garden with a lot going on. You can't see it in the background, but I have a carnelian cherry. I need to plant a second one. I've been planting seeds and they're not coming up, so I'll probably have to buy a plant. This is a Mayday tree. Along the fence rows here we have asparagus, we have josta berries, we have white imperial currants, we have red currants, and we have chives, we have some gooseberries. Blackberry coming up here, and we have Schisandra vines. Ooh, and a Schisandra vine is flowering. Boy, I gotta show you this, first time for that. These Schisandra vines I should show you first are going to be growing up onto these two. I'm going to put a pole across them so they can wind up all around that. I gotta show you this. Schisandra vine is flowering. Right there. Look at that. Here we have our third main crop garden. So along along the outer edge of the bed I have radishes planted, and I planted sweet corn in it, in with the radishes. There's a lineup of potato onions here. There's some primocane blackberries, which really have never done very good. Maybe this year because it was a warm winter. We have a grapevine in the back. We have peonies. We have lupine, wild celery, orris 8, gooseberry, cilantro. Along this bed here we have potato onions, yacon. There's some corn planted in here with the yacon. There's milkweed coming up. There's peas in here. And I'm going to be planting some climbing beans yet. Behind me we have a couple of squash. This next bed is again yacon, corn. No onions in this one. There's some borage, peas, some radishes that's self-seeded. I haven't seen the corn come up yet, so hopefully that gets started. That's sweet corn. The bed on the other wall, or other fence, we have a really nice Cannabis grapevine. We got a lot of grapes out of it last year, and looks like it's setting up to have more. There's a gooseberry, peony, there's radishes, climbing peas, and I just planted some sweet corn in it. And then there's barley in the front, wild celery, and some hybrid chestnuts that I'm nursing. And also there are tayberries in here. There's tayberry in the back and tayberry on the other side. So we have tayberries. That's a cross between a raspberry and a blackberry. And more gooseberries. Wild. So this is an asparagus patch that I started last spring. So it's more than a year old now. This will be its second summer. These are Jersey Giants, and they're growing marvelously. They're going to require a lot of compost in here because I planted them thick. In the foreground I have 2 grapevines. I've got a little thicket of blueberries. There's a big old tayberry that I transplanted. In the background we have a Wolf River apple tree. We have a hugelkultur that I didn't plant for 2 or 3 years now. In the background I have really big rhubarb, and I'm letting rhubarb go to seed so that the pollinators have something to eat. We have a weeping cherry, and there's some asparagus, and I planted some sorghum right here behind the asparagus. So this little spot here I highlighted in one of my videos. This is a Honeycrisp apple tree that's planted in a polyculture. And I got some sad news to report. The hybrid chestnut has died. Didn't make it through the winter. But otherwise everything else is coming. We got some mints, spearmint. We have a comfrey plant. You see that comfrey plant right here? Mints are right over here. Comfrey plant. We have a rhubarb. We have chives. And then of course there's the Honeycrisp apple. And then here is a elderberry tree right alongside of it. In the background we have some josta berries. This is 4 corners, 4 hugelkulturs all the way around. And it's being taken over by just about anything that can grow. And I'm allowing that to happen. I'm going to harvest it all for a compost. So in the tubes here we have Ben Falk sea berries. And I've got some goji berries planted in here now. Another one. I've got a Siberian peach tree from Mikhail Ann. I've got some edible burdock in the foreground. The burdock all behind here is just wild burdock. I was going to make this into a kiwi trellis, but I've got a lot of kiwis planted, so I'm changing my mind. I might turn this into a glass house. There's a nectarine tree, a peach tree, there's asparagus planted all around. In the background are hybrid chestnut trees, more Siberian peach shrubs, there's blueberries planted in there, more goji berries along the line there, blackberries all along the fence, all the way around. In this strip here I have a Sweet 16 apple tree. There's a Newgard peach tree. I've got some currants. There's probably the most magnificent of our hybrid chestnut seedlings back here. There's a candy crisp. We have a cherry tree paired with a pea shrub. Here's an apple tree that I've tried grafting over a couple of years and none of the grafts ever took. This originally was a northern spy, but it died back and then it sent up shoots from the rootstock. So I'll keep working on it. This is a Bartlett pear. We've got chives and comfrey and mullein and rhubarb and different types of flowers and onions, spring onions and garlic. Some monster thistles, gooseberries. There's a lot happening on this side of the food forest, but not quite as much as what's happening on the other side. This is a jungle. So I'll have to walk in there so you can understand the depth of it. Right away in the front here, this is a red Rome apple tree, and I'm training a grapevine. So I'll have grapes and apples in the same tree. So this is our super rhubarb, and I got quite a few of them planted in here, just monster stalks. And of course there's chives all over, there's spring onions all over. I've got a new addition, you can't see it here, but it's a elephant garlic. I got those scattered all around in this area. We have ronia, red, white and blue, no, red, white and black, currants, lupine, lupus. I know there's chamomile coming up. Right here's chamomile, German chamomile. And we have just a mixture, no rhyme or reason to it, of pear, apple, cherry, plum, and peach trees in here, and nectarine trees. And there's a nectarine tree. Stinging nettle, mint, lots of mints. I noticed last year on our Golden Delicious, where the mint was on the south side, there weren't hardly any worms in the apples, but the apples on the north side where there wasn't any mint had a lot of holes, a lot of worm holes in them. Now sitting in a bed of chocolate mint, and oh, does that smell nice. Ooh. Yeah, compared to 5 years ago, this was just long grass and a couple apple trees. I gotta say, this is a wow. I got piles of twigs in here so that the birds have things to go look in through for bugs. And I got some lavender in here, some sage. Here's a chocolate mint. Ooh, that smells good. Put some right in my top pocket so I keep smelling it. Here we have one honey locust tree in the food forest, and I planted this is a Geneva kiwi plant here. So I'm going to let that Geneva kiwi plant grow up this honey locust. The honey locust is actually fruiting. I didn't notice that. See, it's fruiting. This is my hazelnut thicket right here. There are about 30 plants in here. When they're growing, you're not going to be able to see through it. But the purpose is I'm looking for those that are highly productive. And if they don't produce a good crop in 5 years, they're out. At least the center do that too. The outer ones are Americans. They're for pollen, making pollen to send into the center of the precocious. So interspersed with the hazelnuts, this is my swale here. My first swale I've dug. I'm standing there right now. This is the swale mound, and it's just luscious. I've got bird's foot on it, but also there's yarrow and tansy, and I know there's some lupus coming up in here. The goldenrods I'll probably pull out. They'll get too intrusive. And I got an apple, a cherry, a peach, another cherry, and another peach growing in here, right on top of the mound. And in between here, in between these trees, I have sea berries planted. So this swale and swale mound is in the center of the hazelnut thicket. Well, not quite center, maybe to the left of center. So we're starting with hazelnuts off about 12 feet, and it goes off about 20 feet in this direction. And the precocious seedlings that I have growing here, I planted annual crops as they grow. I got garlic and onions in here. A couple of magnificent thistles coming up in it. There's a honey locust tree right here. And then there's a couple of apple trees. Now this Arkansas black tree, that's way over the top of where the hazelnuts are going to grow, so it'll be okay there. So here's the first swale that I dug. You can see the mound is lush. This is the bear fence that I bought from a fellow for $100. It's oak planks. It takes 4 guys to handle one of those fence sections. But that's going to be erected here on the south side of our property line. So this is our property line right here. The camera is actually on a neighbor's property right now. So right here, I got 110 feet that I got to traverse with the fence, and there's 120 feet with the fence. So this is going to be one heck of a fence. Try buying just one of those planks in the store. So we're going to go on top of the fence here. I'm going to show you my newest creation. Some of you who watch my composting videos, this is a familiar angle to you. And yesterday I finished the 2016 spring pile, and I divided the compost up into these beds. The 2 beds with all the yellow flags on it signifies different varieties of melons. And the larger mound there to the back, there to the left, that I got an experiment going on with honey locust seeds. The pile was hot, so I took the very center of the pile that was hot, and I created a mound first, maybe a foot tall. Then I dumped all the seeds still in the pods over the top of that mound, and then I heaped up another 6-8 inches of compost over the top while it was still hot. Now the experiment is to find out if those beans will sprout. And I got a little outlier over here that's planted with squash. The squash can go over there to the hazelnut area. And I put up that 6-foot high, 6-foot wide fence as to be a barrier from the north wind. And then in the fall, when we, during the sun's equinox, the sun is dropping, and we're getting cooler nights and all the rest of that. Well, that fence is going to serve as a reflective to continue heating up this area so those melons ripen. And it's not also just reflective; it'll be conductive. It'll retain heat through the night. There's a little experiment I got going on there. The potatoes and pots that I've done before. But that's a half a barrel. I cut that barrel in half. The half at the bottom I'm going to make a wicking bed out of, but this half I just sunk into the ground a couple inches. I filled it up full of debris that I had, an old compost, old anaerobic compost that had gone to soil, and I planted sweet potatoes on it. That's my compost sifter. My unique design. It just came out of my mind. That's right, I'm out of my mind. Right here is my 4th main crop garden. I've got 5 beds in here. They're 10 feet long. And I've got some beds on the ends. And this is where I was conducting my composting operation over the last couple of years. So I fenced her all in. I've got grapes now along the fences, kiwis. The kiwis are designed to go up into the cherry trees that the camera's under. I've got some sea berries in here, gooseberries, currants. There's a pear tree that I espaliered. I got a peach tree here that I'm going to espalier. In the beds, I have Cossack kohlrabi, we have celeriac, there are some okra, these are more Cossack kohlrabi, and these 4 here are winter kohlrabi. Those I'm going to eat as soon as they get the size of a hard ball. And I'm going to plant radishes in here. And we have potato onions that I planted in the spring. And then we have our Michigan grade garlic, hard neck garlic. In amongst these potato onions, I have a few kohlrabi planted in here. I got a cabbage. And the garlic, I got a cabbage and a kohlrabi. And in the pots, the 4 pots in the back here are potatoes, and most of these are, I think all of these are Peruvian purple. The Peruvian purple potatoes did really well in the pots, but didn't do so well in the ground. So I don't know, maybe I have a vole problem, but the voles don't eat potatoes in the pot, so I did a lot of pots. I got a lot of pots laying all over the place here. And I have a pot with sweet potato in it. In the corner here I got some blackberries, there's some stinging nettle, a gooseberry, and then on this end we have more blackberries all along the fence, more gooseberries in the corner, and tayberries. I actually have cuttings of tayberries here that are all beginning to leaf out. So the idea here with all these main crop gardens are to surround the outside, the outside the fence perimeters with perennials, and not only to have a crop but attract all the pollinators and all the predator insects and birds in. And then in the center we have our beds of our annuals. That's the idea. And judging by how well I did produce in my older main crop gardens over the last 3 years since I started this routine, I can't think of anything that's going to go wrong here. It's just going to be a success. Meow. This right here is what I feel is the most important tree on the property. It's a hickory that produces very, very large nuts. So I planted that last spring, so it's a year old. This is its 2nd year. And she's really put on some good growth already this year. And it's not even June yet. I did a double fencing around it. I got a plastic coated hardware fencing in the center to keep out all the rodents, and then I've got a chicken wire around the outside of that. And when it starts to protrude itself out over the top of the hardware cloth, I'm going to put a 6-foot high, 2 by 3 inch fence over that. I really want this one to grow. 50 years from now, this is going to be a tree that's a real winner. So right here is my 5th main crop garden. And incidentally, all these main crop gardens are different widths, but basically they're about 15 feet by 15 feet. And the object of that dimension is I can put a pole in the center, and if we have a drought I can put some shade cloth over the top, or maybe we have a really cold summer and maybe I can put some black material over it to warm it up in here, or even some plastic. So those are the extremes. I'm not really looking forward to something like that happening, but if it does, I'll have that option. Now we have 4 beds in this 5th main crop garden, and maybe I got that wrong. This was actually the 4th one that's constructed. The one over there is the 5th. So we'll correct that. Along the edge, right along the fence, I have a whole lineup of yellow raspberries, and interspersed with them are climbing peas. And this bed right here I have kohlrabi, and then I have a new mixture with it. I got yellow bush beans. So that's a companion planting. In the back corner we have a My Idaho apricot tree, and along with it are blueberries, aronia, gooseberries, and service berries, all planted together. And the pots are potatoes, The next bed here is, these are French shallots in the front, and I planted some parsnip seeds with it, and I only seen like 2 or 3 come up so far. I'm hoping I get a parsnip crop here, because these shallots are going to be done in August. It'll be nice to allow those parsnips to continue on and grow a root crop for late fall, and even I might leave them over winter and pull them in the spring. Behind me, the other section of the bed is potato onions. It's the same thing with the inner 2 beds, same planting. I got some kohlrabi interspersed planted with them. There's radishes here with the potato onions, and on the end we have Polish red softneck garlic. Sweet potatoes in the mound. The sweet potatoes are next to the fence. Again, that becomes a heat sink, and it shields from the north wind, so that should definitely help those sweet potatoes. I got yet to put the gates up, but I'll make those gates sometime along the line. It's planting season right now, and we're just finishing up with that. So I want to do some fishing, but along with that, when I want something to do, I'll come back here and finish up a lot of this stuff. So that's kind of a quick overview of my main frame. And this doesn't include the kitchen gardens, and I didn't get back into the what I call a zone 4, more wild. I got pawpaws and persimmons and black walnuts. I got a lot of things planted way in the back. I didn't get into that either. But this is already too long of a video, and you got the idea of how I got this sectioned up. Where the kitchen garden up by the house, that's zone 1. Here we're looking at zone 2 with the main crop gardens. Kind of zone 2 to zone 3 is the forest, food forest, and the forest gardens, and then definitely it's a zone 4 type of scenario with the larger trees and the pawpaws and the persimmons. You might even call a little corridor on the side that went wild and I got brush piled all over the place. That could be like a zone 5. And the reason why I say the food forest, especially the food forest, can be like a zone 3 is because I allow the critters to come in, and the rabbits come in and eat, and deer, and so that's our animal component. And a lot of birds. We got tons of birds. Of course, every time they land on something, guess what they do? They're going to fertilize it. So even though I don't have any animals here, I still have an animal interaction. So that's good. You can hear the singing in the background. Those are my house wrens. They're really good at cleaning out the garden of pests. And I have a lot of house sparrows around. I see the grackles are in here, and the robins and crows are flying around. All kinds of birds I don't even recognize, that I don't know about. I saw an orange bird. Must be an oriole. Just a couple days ago. I had a flicker come through here last fall. Well, that's probably something I should start doing, is recording all these birds that my permaculture backyard is attracting in. We are a sanctuary. Okay, that's enough. Thanks for watching.